Hey, it's MegaMan TCG here with another deck feature. Today we're going to be doing IceMan, which is a very broken net Navi with a super broken effect. I'll just jump into it really quickly. I did actually preview this in my community's post tab earlier last week, just to give you a glimpse in case you've never seen this before. But this Navi has probably one of the most busted effects. So if you're looking for ways to win and you actually want a very straightforward, easy way to win in this game, you're definitely want to check out this video from start to finish, because I'm going to give you a list that is actually really crummy, really broken. I say crummy in the sense that it's crummy for your opponent. Like it's just, you're going to clobber them without really trying. I was actually a little reluctant to share this list just because of just how crummy it is to play against, but at the same time, I do want to give you like good ideas, good recipes that you can use to win games. So given that that's kind of like the purpose of some of these deck features, like I'm not going to hold back. So we are going to cover this deck. And yeah, you know, I'll just get into the effect really quickly, just in case you're like watching the channel, watching this video for the first time, you didn't see the post. But his effect is whenever you play a resource, you may make your opponent place a card from hand in his or her power gauge. So kind of broken, because all you can basically do is like stack your deck up with like free to play resources, and just as soon as you're able to go first, you know, if you cut the deck or roll a die, if you go first and you draw your opening hand and you have a lot of resources you could just drop on the board, you could basically eliminate your opponent's hand. If you played any card game, discarding cards from your opponent's hand is usually a very powerful strategy, just because you're like totally neutering their options. They're not able to retaliate, and you're just getting rid of their options, their deck strategy. So that's basically what IceMan is in this game. He's just like that guy who can just get rid of the opponent's hand really quickly, so they don't even have an ability, like they just have no options to like get back at you. So he's just got that built in. So like if you just play him right off the bat, like all you have to really do is just play resources. Like you have to play a deck that basically lets you play resources all the time, and you just keep neutering your opponent's hand. So he's really cheesy like that. He's really broken. And I'm going to show you a list that is actually from a gentleman named Zero Skater 12. He's a good friend, awesome guy, by the way. I do want to shout him out. He did support the channel last week. He gave us a great donation through the Buy Me a Coffee links. I do want to shout him out. Awesome friend, awesome member of the community, and this is actually his deck. He's the one that kind of pioneered this. And he's the one that like proved to us that like IceMan can be broken if you go outside of his kit. Because admittedly, IceMan's kit does kind of suck. I'm telling you from experience, I tried it. It just doesn't work. But in this approach that I'm about to show you today, which is actually from Zero Skater, it does work, and it's actually incredibly broken and like almost ban worthy. So I did want to shout him out because it is his deck, and he's a good friend of the channel, a great member of the community, and a great player, one of the best players. And this is actually his recipe. So I did just want to like, I did want to mention him and give credit where credit is due. But yeah, before I get into the deck feature, if it's your first time here, if you're coming back, again, any love you could show to the channel, just like letting us know that like you appreciate the content, you want to see more of it. All you have to do is subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, just let me know what you think about the videos. If you have any questions, all that stuff really helps. It doesn't cost you anything, and it just helps me know that like you appreciate the content, you want me to do more. So if you could just like subscribe to the channel, like the video, or leave a comment, I'd love that. I also have a Buy Me a Coffee link. You can send as little as $5, or you can send whatever is best for you. But these are ways of just letting me know that you appreciate the content, you want to see more videos on the MegaMan TCG. Anything you can do would be appreciated. I just want to put that out there. So with that said and done, let's get into the deck feature. So I went over his effect. Let's get into his like Navi card specifically a little bit. So he has like a crazy stat line. He's got 1 attack, which is terrible. And he's got 3 defense, which is great. Actually, 3 defense is fantastic. But then he's got the 4 blast, which sucks, because then you're like not blast. So he's got 1 attack, which already stinks. But now you got 4 blasts. You can't even like get the attack up as often as you like. So he really stinks. But again, like in the context of the effect he has, it kind of is like you can justify it, because it's like, dude, he's got like such a crazy effect. So it'd be insane, right, to give him this crazy effect, but also give him like such aggressive like stats. So obviously the game designers kind of balanced him out. They gave him this crazy effect, but they, kind of neuters his attacks, right? So the problem then is that like, he's got this cool effect where you could basically wither away your opponent's hand, but then like he doesn't really have, you may look at this card and think, oh, he's so broken, I could just like play whatever deck, and I could just kill my opponent's hand and I'll win. And it's like in theory, you think that can work, but in practice, it doesn't play out that way. In practice, what happens is you get rid of your opponent's hand, but then you don't really have a way to punch back because he's got the stupid one attack and it takes forever to blast. So, and his kit, his natural kit, it's yellow and green, so it doesn't really lend itself to like an offense naturally. So while and a lot of them are turn 4 resources, so like you gotta wait a while before you can even drop them. So his kit kind of blows. His effect is great, but he just doesn't have any way to punch. And that's the issue overall. Fundamentally, that's the issue with IceMan is he's got this great effect where you can get rid of your opponent's hand, but then there's no sort of follow-up. There's no way to punch and do damage, which essentially gives your opponent time to like draw into a combo, get themselves sort of like set up again and just like start attacking you. So, but Zero Skater has found a way to like make this work, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. I'm going to actually start by showing you the win con of the deck, which is basically it's a burn deck. So instead of using his natural yellow and green kit, we're just going to start using red cards, which are essentially the burn card. Like in this game, red cards are usually damage oriented, so it's like upgrading the strength, upgrading the defense, upgrading the blast, and in many cases it's just doing straight up burn damage, which is losing energy in this game. That's what burn in any card game is, just like where you take away cards from their deck. But it's called losing energy in this game. So just want to clear that up in case you're new and you're not, I don't want to assume what you know and what you don't know. But yeah, so basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be playing a lot of resources, red resources specifically, that take down the opponent's hand using IceMan's effect. And then because we've got red resources on the board, we can use these sort of events that require red resources for us to do burn damage. So this basically gives us a full circle approach where IceMan's effect gets rid of the hand, but then at least we have a follow-up and where we can actually damage the opponent. Because again, he has the effect of taking down the opponent's hand, but his natural kit doesn't really have a punching ability. Like there's no way to like actually do damage. So it's great. You took down their hand, but now you're not really doing any damage. So it kind of sucks. Like you got like, you won half the battle, but you didn't win the entire battle. Whereas this like approach that Zero Skater came up with is you can take down the hand, but you can also punch back. So it actually turns out to be very broken. And like I said, I actually think it's kind of ban worthy, but I'm not saying we should ban it. I just think like he's so broken given this like specific list that like it almost like kind of warrants it. But yeah, our win cons in this deck is basically these events that do like direct damage. So we've got burned here, which is a 2 destiny, you need 2 red resources. You don't need a power gauge, and what it does is it makes your opponent lose an energy for each resource in play. So potentially, ideally, you're hitting them for 8 damage, which is insane amounts of damage. We've also got Cutting Edge, which is 5 destiny, which is wonderful. We got you need 2 red resources on the board, no power gauge, and your opponent loses an energy for each card fewer than 5 in his or her hand, right? So this just obviously lends itself really well to the fact that with IceMan, if you're playing resources, they're going to go down to 0 cards in hand very quickly, which means you can hit them for 5 more often than not with the Cutting Edge ability, right? So those are our win cons. And it's kind of a meme that there's no BattleChips with him. He doesn't need BattleChips. In fact, BattleChips would be kind of clunky in this context because, one, they're not resources, so you can't necessarily play them to take down the opponent's hand. And the other issue with BattleChips is they generally, like the BattleChips you would be able to play, they only like add enough strength. Like they might add like 2 or 3 strength. He's got this measly 1 where like that's just not a big enough deal. So for us to really like get a serious punch in, we have to rely on events. And so for this deck specifically, we're not going to be using any BattleChips. I know it's like really blasphemous because it's Battle Network, right? Oh, BattleChips. That's like the whole point of like the EXE Battle Network series. I know. But like, you got to get over that if you want to win. And trust me, if you play this list without the BattleChips, you will win more often than not. So for this round, we're not going to be using any BattleChips, but trust me, it's totally worth it because our win con is these 2 events right here. But we've got other ways to like do damage, but like really it's going to be these 2. These are going to be doing the heavy lifting. So With that said, let's get into the actual deck build. I'll show you the resources first, as always, and we'll get into the events, which I kind of previewed, but there's some extra stuff, so I'll get into that. So let's start with so this is a let me just specify, this is a red-green build. Obviously, we need reds to be able to play our events that I just showed you, but we also have greens, which are going to help us actually get to those cards. Again, if you're new to the channel or you're new to the game, just to kind of get you up to speed, green in this game is kind of card access. That's kind of the overall theme of green cards. It lets you draw cards, generally speaking. It lets you take cards from your deck or take cards from the discard pile. Green is generally, and there's a bit of like regenerate, like you can also recharge energy, which is kind of the healing aspect of the game, meaning you take cards from your discard pile and you put them into the bottom of your deck. We call it recharging energy in this game. So that's like kind of the theme of green cards in this game. So I just want to like get you up to speed in case you're not, in case you're new here. But yeah, so we've got a red-green deck. I'll start with the red because that kind of I think that just makes more sense and gives it's a better way to like kind of explain you the deck here. So I'll start with that. So we're going to be playing 4 clear victories. These are our 4 red resources. You don't need anything in your power gauge, so it just works really well with IceMan because like as soon as you draw, you could drop it, and as soon as you drop a resource, you could trigger his effect and get a card in your opponent's hand in the power gauge and just slowly wither away their options to even like punch back at you. So the effect is spend, you lose 6 energy to make your opponent lose 4 energy. So you may think that's kind of rough, that's kind of not that great, but like the reality is it's actually awesome because it is a burn card. It is it is a punching card. It gives us an ability to punch the opponent and do damage, but more importantly, the lose 6 energy is actually not bad because we want sometimes to have cards in our discard pile, because I'm going to show you on the green resource side, we have cards that actually let us take things from the discard pile whenever we want. So this is actually a milling card. It's going to give us it's just going to make it easier for us to access our combos and our cards that we need. So it is a double whammy in that sense, where the lose 6 energy gives us like cards that we need in our discard pile that we can fetch much more easily, and it does damage to the opponent at the same time. So really excellent card. It is a secret rare. It's really hard to get. You have to buy power-up boxes to pull this. Totally worth it though. You definitely want to get a playset. Very cool card. You can use it in so many decks, but we definitely want to have it in this deck. So for that reason, we're playing 4. I'll just place them over here. Next up, we got 4 Raise the Temp. So Raise the Temp is a 1 destiny. You do need 2 in the power gauge, and what it does is when you spend it, you place a card from your discard pile on top of your deck. You're going to see why that makes sense in a sec, so hold on to that thought, but there is a reason why we want this to stack cards on our deck. It'll become obvious in a sec, but it is a red. It is a 2. You do need 2 in the power gauge, so it's relatively fast for us to drop this on the board and trigger IceMan's effect. I'll actually put IceMan over here so you can still see him. But yeah, it is a red. It just helps us like get more reds on the board really fast, just because you only need 2 in the power gauge. So for that reason, we're playing 4. Next up, we're also playing 4 1 to Talk. So this is essentially Raise the Temp, but just in a different it's a different variation. It's a 3 destiny. You do need 3 in the power gauge, which is a little slower than the first 2 cards I showed you. But it's literally like Raise the Temp, where you get to place a card from your discard pile on top of your deck. And again, I do want to just point that IceMan has 3 def, so you stacking cards on your deck means that like you get to like put it in your power gauge, or you get to use it in some cases. I'm going to show you how that works, but you don't have to necessarily worry about your opponent doing damage just because they have a higher attack, because the 3 def usually stacks up against most navies. So yeah, we definitely want to have Raise the Temp and 1 to Talk, just because it gives us the ability to stack our decks. And I'll actually just show you the card that like comes into play when it comes to these 2 cards, Raise the Temp and 1 to Talk. So it's actually the next set of cards that we want to have 4 of. It's Weeper. So this is a super interesting card. 2 destiny. You do need 3 in the power gauge, but when you spend it, you reveal the top card of your deck, and you may play it even if it is a resource. And to play that card, obviously, you need to have its requirements met. Sorry. So yeah, as you can imagine, with Raise the Temp and 1 to Talk, we're basically going to stack cards that we want. In a lot of cases, it's going to be the burned or the cutting edge, and we're going to use Weepers to basically trigger that card, So we'll stack it with 1 to talk, we'll use the weepers, and then we'll use the burn to do damage to our opponent. So that's kind of the idea with that. That again, these 3 just give us our reds so that we can even play these 2 cards to begin with, the burn and the cutting edge. But yeah, the weepers just kind of lets us get that extra access. So I did mention that Clear Victory has this sort of like milling effect. So yeah, like we want to get our cards in the discard pile with Clear Victory so that we can use things like Raise the Temp or 1 to talk to stack it, and then cards like Weepers to like just like access it really quickly and just start doing that damage. So one other thing I just want to note really quickly is you do need to keep, like, so if you happen to land on a resource with Weepers, you do need to have an empty slot on the board, because it does still kind of count on as being a resource on the board. So let's say you have Weepers and like Raise the Temp and 1 to talk and some other card. If you pull a resource, you won't be able to play it because Weepers still counts as being on the board. So you definitely want to have at least, if you only have 4 resource slots, you need that 4th slot open so that Weepers can actually hit a resource if you happen to land on it. So I do want you to just keep that in mind. It doesn't vanish and open it. It doesn't like vanish and then give its slot to whatever you pull. You need an extra slot available as you're activating effect in case you pull a resource and you want to drop it. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, leave a question in the comments. I'll be more than glad to elaborate on that. But yeah, we definitely want to have 4 copies of that one. We're also going to be playing 4 copies of MegaMan, the Ally, licensed to Elite. So an Ally card is essentially a Navi. You're allowed to play it as long as the Navi you're playing is not reflective of the Ally. So if I were playing a MegaMan deck, I can't play MegaMan allies. If there's an IceMan ally, I wouldn't be able to play it since I'm playing IceMan. So it's basically like a buddy for that Navi, and obviously you can't be your own buddy. So like, if there's a Torchman ally, you can't play it if you're playing Norchman. Hopefully that makes sense. But we're playing Iceman so we can play MegaMan as our ally. And this one we're playing because it honestly is just a burn card. So it is a 1 destiny, which is whatever. You do need 4 in your power gauge, which isn't that great, but it does make your opponent lose 3 energy. So it just kind of goes with the overall theme of just doing direct damage to your opponent. So for that reason, it gives us it's a red resource that we can play, and it does direct damage. We can spend it very easily and just do 3 damage to our opponents. So for that reason, we're playing 4. And then, yeah, that's pretty much our reds. Let's get into our green resources. Our green resources really help get us to speed and give us access to our cards a lot faster. So we are playing 4 Snowed In. Snowed In is probably it is the only Iceman card that's actually worth playing in this deck. It's a 1 destiny. There's no power gauge requirement. You do lose 2 energy as a cost, but that's okay because again, we kind of like milling stuff. And it just lets us draw 2 cards. So pretty cool. It's just speed again. It just lets us like draw into our combos or whatever is a lot faster. Again, like with Raise the Temp and 1 to talk, you could stack cards and then you could use Snowed In to draw into the cards you just stacked. So really powerful stuff. It's the only Iceman card that's actually worth using in this context. But yeah, for that reason, we're going to be playing 4 of them. So I'll put those over there. Next up, we got 4 It's Not Over Yet. These are just like, oh yeah, I should probably mention it. There's no power gauge requirement. So the second you draw it, you can just trigger Iceman. So that's a big part of why we're using it. And the same goes for It's Not Over Yet. It's a 1 destiny, no power gauge requirement. So the second you draw it, you drop it, your opponent loses a hand, it goes into power gauge. And it has a really simple effect. It's just draw a card. But again, with Raise the Temp and 1 to talk, you can stack and just draw into like things like Bird and Cutting Edge. So really, really nasty stuff. Again, it's free to play. There's no power gauge requirements. So the second you draw, you drop it, and your opponent loses that 1 card in their hand. We also have Eat More Fish. We got 4 copies of this. 3 Destiny, which is okay. 2 in the you need 2 in the power gauge to drop it. But similar to It's Not Over Yet and Snowed In, it's a draw card. This one you have to burn a power to draw 2 cards. But again, if maybe you're just trying to draw into your cards a lot faster. So it's like for the sake of just drawing into our combo cards, like whether it's Burned or Cutting Edge. Maybe you're stacking with like one to talk and Raise the Temps. You stack 2 cards and then you use this to like draw into those 2 cards. So yeah, for that reason, we want to play 4 of them. It just kind of makes sense with like what we're trying to do. We've got 4 uploads. So Upload is a 4 destiny. You do need 2 in the power gauge. You do have to burn 2 power, which kind of sucks. That's its cost, but it just lets you take any card from your discard pile into your hand. So honestly, you're going to mostly take like cards like Burned or you know, cutting edge, because like the whole point of the deck is just to get rid of your opponent's hand and to just do direct damage as quickly as possible, just to kick them out of the game. So the upload just kind of helps us. It's because it's only 2 power gauge requirement. That means you could just drop it, get rid of a card in their hand, put it in the power gauge, and it just gives you that. It just sits there, and whenever you're ready to like spend it, you could just like take your burn card and just like start like, you know, doing damage and getting them out of the game. So yeah, we're definitely going to be playing 4 of that. We're also going to be playing 4 gender differences. You probably see this card in every deck feature I do, just because it's that insane. It's that good. It's a staple. 1 destiny, 3 power gauge requirement, which is whatever, but you lose 2 energy to take any card from your discard pile into your hand. So again, very similar to upload. It just helps us get whatever we want, whenever we want. And yeah, obviously we're going to play 4 of those just because of how nuts it is. And we're also playing 4 blue battle wars. You may have seen this in the last video. This is like a cracked out version of like gender differences and upload. It's a 1 destiny, 3 power gauge requirement, which is whatever. You do have to burn 3, which is really expensive, but it's kind of worth it because you could take any 2 cards from your discard pile into your hand. So, you know, if you could just take 2 burns or 2 cutting edges, that's, you know, that's just like damage you could just like start using to like win the game really quickly. So really busted, really broken. Gender differences you can use to like get into your blue battler, which then gives you 2 cards, right? So it's just nuts, and that for that reason we definitely want to play 4 of them. And then last but not least, we do actually have some blue cards. We have 3 eliminates. So eliminate, you probably saw this in the last video. It's a 2 destiny, 3 power gauge requirement, but you spend it, and what it can do is it can return itself or a resource in play to its owner hand, into the owner's hand. So with IceMan, you could basically create this infinite loop where you can keep bouncing itself back, eliminate, and every time you bounce it back and play it, IceMan just triggers and you put down a card from your opponent's hand into the power gauge. So really devastating, kind of insane actually. And yeah, for that reason, we're playing 3. You could play 4. I like to play 3. I just had a hard time figuring out what other cards to take out. But if you really like that combo of just like taking down an opponent's card every turn with the Eliminate IceMan combo, definitely feel free to play 4. But in my build, I just decided to go with 3. So, but yeah, really nuts, and we definitely want to like take advantage of that. Last but not least, we've got our events. I kind of show this to you because they are the win con of the deck. So we've got 4 burn. I'll just recap it in case, you know, just because it's been a while since the video started, but 2 destiny, you do need 2 red resources, which would be fairly easy to pull off with our sort of setup. And we've got tons of greens that help us get access to those reds in case we're not drawing them. And it does just make your opponent lose an energy for each resource in play. So technically, if they're playing their resources, assuming they've gotten around to it, and you've got a whole board because you're dropping them very easily, you should be doing 8 damage, right? Potentially you should be able to do 8 damage. So that's our win con. This is our damage doer. This is our sort of our punching card, and we're going to be using this a lot to just basically get our opponent to lose the game. So yeah, for sure, we definitely want to play 4. We've also got cutting edge just because it lends itself really well to IceMan's effect. It's a 5 destiny, which is wonderful. You do need 2 resources that are red to play. You don't need a power gauge, and your opponent loses an energy for each card fewer than 5 in his or her hand, which should be fairly easy to pull off given that IceMan is just constantly withering away their hand with the resource drops that you're pulling off every turn. So yeah, alongside burn, these 2 cards are just basically what gets you closer and closer to winning the game, because that's just what you do to like do damage to your opponent. And last but not least, we got 4 frozen. Frozen is a green event. It's a 5 destiny. You do need 1 green on the board, which should be fairly easy given our sort of like layout. You don't need a power gauge, and awesome card because all you really like, the way it works is if you have exactly 3 cards in hand, all you have to do is lose an energy, and then you can take any card from your discard pile into your hand. So it's another recursion card, very similar to upload, gender differences, blue battle. Again, it just gives us access to like whatever we need at the time, whether it's a resource to like drop on the board next turn, to like get rid of a card in your opponent's hand, or just to give us access to our burn card so that we can start doing more damage and just defeat the opponent a lot sooner. So definitely want to play 4 of those. It's just, again, it's kind of like a wild card. It's a joker card similar to blue battle or gender differences and upload. It just gives us access to whatever card we need at that given moment. And yeah, that's pretty much the deck over here. Again, it's a really cheesy deck. It just like easily wins. You don't, it almost like autopilots. So like if you're new and you're just looking for an easy way to win, this is this is definitely a list you could go with. Your opponent will hate you because it's just so hard to kind of like play against. It is just so broken like that. But you know, that's like Zero Skitter for you. He just comes up with these like really amazing decks. So we do want to shout him out again. He's a great friend and a very skilled player, and all credit goes to him for coming up with this. Awesome guy. And yeah, look, if you're getting started, a lot of times people get started and they're like, well, what deck should I play? I don't really have it's hard to come up with an answer. I usually say, look, if you have a specific Navi that you're like kind of into, if you're a fan of, like, you should play that. But if you're really just trying to win and you don't really want to think about it, like, you can't really go wrong with this. So hopefully this video today gave you some ideas. If you're just having a hard time figuring out how to get started, this is definitely one way to do that. It's really easy to win with this deck again. And yeah, I hope this video has inspired you, giving you some ideas. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all I got for you today. Again, if it's your first time on the channel or you're coming back, would love to see some support. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment if you have a question that popped up, or let me know what you think about the deck. I'd love to hear from you. And I do also have a buy me a coffee, as I mentioned. So if you're willing to make a donation, whether as little as $5 or whatever you're comfortable with, these are all ways to just let me know you like the content, you want to see me doing more, and just your way of showing support to the channel and helping it grow. So that's all I got for you today. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to sharing with you the next video, which should be coming out next week. Definitely check out my posts, my community tab. I do share updates, sort of teasers of like what the next video is going to be about. So definitely tune in for that, and that way you'll know what the new video is going to be about. So that's all I got, and yeah, looking forward to seeing you on the next one. Take care for now. Bye.